How do you forgive yourself? It was my senior year or my last year of seminary, my last class of seminary. We were living in Columbia, moving to Charleston. I was still enrolled in school, but mentally I was done with school, right? Have you ever been there? So we moved to Charleston. They let me do the last class remote. Had a lot going on in my family and marriage, and my focus was on other things. It was my very last test, submit it, and I'm done. I read the instructions, and it says, hey, as you're taking this exam, you can't use your textbook or your class notes. I just thought, interesting that it didn't say anything about not being able to use commentaries or outside resources. So I sat down to take the test and thought, well, since it didn't mention either of those things, and I need a little help remembering the content, I'll use both of them, right? So I did that. I finished the test. I mail it in. I'm feeling good for just a moment. And then all of a sudden it sets in on me that I'm about to start a career in ministry, wrapping up seminary, and it's going to be built on the foundation of being a cheater. And I realize I cannot believe I did that. How was I okay with that? In a moment. So for a couple days, I wrestle with what do I do? They could kick me out of seminary. I mean, cheating was a big deal. Best case scenario, they could let me take the class again. Maybe they make me commute back to Columbia each week to take the class. What's going to happen? So I schedule an appointment with the dean. I drive in to see him. I confess what I had done in part. And then I drive back to Charleston feeling better. I told him that I'd used some additional resources on several of the questions. And I left feeling a little bit better. And I got back in my car. I start to drive back and I realize, you know what? Now you're a cheater and a liar. You didn't just use outside resources on a couple of questions. You used them on the whole test. And so I get back to Charleston and realize now I've got to call the dean, schedule another appointment, and go back to tell him that I didn't just cheat on some of it, I cheated on all of it, and I lied about it, right? So I go back, I schedule an appointment, I meet with the dean, we have a long, good conversation. He forgives me, tells me, Joshua, he had an international accent that just sounded like Jesus, right? Joshua, I do not know why people do such things. Go and sin no more. And I left feeling free, I left feeling forgiven. But what happened over the next couple days is I would be riding up the road and there would be this spirit of condemnation that would come over me like a blanket, that I would feel like a cheater, I would feel like a liar. And I would start walking that narrative out in my mind only to remember I had been forgiven. I confess that. I have brought it into the light. See, the reality for each of us when we can't forgive ourselves is that I'm not a good person who did a bad thing. I'm a sinner deserving of death, whom God so loved that he sent his son to die on a cross for my sins. And any time I struggle with forgiving myself, it's because I put myself on a pedestal or I'm thinking of myself more highly than I ought. I'm not a good person. I'm not a great person who does bad things. I'm a sinner of whom Jesus paid the greatest price. John 8:36 says, so if the Son has set you free, you are free indeed. If you've reconciled the reality that you are a sinner in desperate need of Jesus, if you've received the free gift of salvation, the price that he's paid, then you can forgive yourself because you're able to call your mistakes for what they are. Sin, awful. They hurt and grieve the heart of God. You can repent and turn of them. And if the Son has set you free, you are free indeed. You're not a good person who did a bad thing. You're a bad person in desperate need of forgiveness, and Jesus is here to offer it.